Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swami Niti Namine Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Pradayine Gaurakatha Dhamadaya Nagaragramatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Aradhya Bhagavan Brajesha Tanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachidupasana Brajavadhu Varkena Vakalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Prema Pumartho Maha Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matamidam Tatra Dharana Para Anarpita Charinchira Karunayavatirna Kalo Samarpaitum Munnato Jvalarasam Swabhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dhyuti Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaya Kandare Spuratu Vasachi Nandana. Hare Krishna. We welcome all of our YouTube Live listeners, our listeners over Facebook Live, and our listeners over Zoom. Before we, thank you. Before we start our presentation today, we would like to congratulate all the participants for the quiz session. So we'd like to congratulate Meenakshi Modi Mataji, Meena Mataji, Hari Prasad Prabhu, Mother Flavier, Nutan Purohit Mataji, Shama Supriya, Vijeta Mataji, Vrinda Gopika Mataji, Anju Agarwal Mataji, Sarojmukhi Indulekha Mataji, and Ranjani Gopika. Thank you all so much for participating in the quiz session from yesterday. So we do not have a PowerPoint presentation today. We will continue with our speaking.
Today, we'll start with Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita Adi Leela, which is considered to be the postgraduate study in spirituality. Actually, Chaitanya Charitamrita reveals the mind of God, the inner life of Krishna, and also the appreciation, the attraction that he feels when he's conquered by the love of his devotees. Now, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is like a pure devotional service, describing pure devotion, which is describing the selfless nature of the Vaishnavas. It also describes the deep compassion when God appears as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, in today's materialistic society, this propagation of Nama Sankirtan that Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu did, it offers these living entities like a lifeline, all of us, that we can experience this profound happiness coming from a loving relationship of reciprocation of love with God. If we study this authentic philosophical biography of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, it will definitely inspire us to take full advantage of this priceless gift of Harinam Sankirtan that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has brought. Now, this entire Chaitanya Charitamrita has 11,000 verses, and they are spread over 62 chapters.
So the first 12 chapters in the Adi Leela, the first 12, are called as Invocation, where Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's praying for blessings. He is praying for, begging for mercy from the Vaishnavas, from the previous Acharyas, from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. He also establishes in these 12 chapters, the first 12 chapters, he establishes the divinity of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, the supreme position of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, and the reasons, for Mahaprabhu's descent, which we have described a little bit in, like an overview in the past few days. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami also invokes respect and reverence of the previous Acharyas before narrating this great work of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this chapter 1 is therefore entitled The Spiritual Masters. It's very, very appropriately, named as the Spiritual Masters because any work is not complete. Even whether we are, giving our exams in school, or if we are going for any kind of spiritual education, we must thank and offer our respects to our Guru Vargas. So in that mood, exactly in that mood, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami very, very faithfully in this entire first chapter, he is glorifying his spiritual authorities. He's glorifying the previous Acharyas, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, the Panchatattva, the Shada Goswamis, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, all of the previous Acharyas, and thus Sri Krishna and Balaram himself.
So Srila Prabhupada, he writes in the introduction to the first chapter that this edition of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is presented for the study of sincere scholars who are really seeking the absolute truth. It is not the arrogant scholarship of a mental speculator, but a sincere effort to serve the order of a superior authority whose service is the life and soul of this humble effort. So Srila Prabhupada is actually glorifying this essence of this book, which can be understood simply by hearing, oral reception, which is very important. And so the first chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita begins with 14 verses that describe the absolute truth. Then the next 3 Sanskrit verses, they describe the principal deities of Vrindavan, Sri Radha Madan Mohan, Sri Radha Govindadev, and Sri Radha Gopinath Ji. So here we can understand 14 is absolute truth, 3 is for the principal deities, and the entire first chapter is actually devoted to this one single verse, which describes Lord Chaitanya in his 6 different transcendental expansions. And what are those 6 expansions that this verse describes? Lord Chaitanya's expansions are spiritual masters. They are expansions of Lord Chaitanya.
That's the first.
Gurun. Then the next is Isha Bhaktan, which means devotees. Third is Isha Vatarakan, which is Isha Avatarakan, incarnations, avatar. Then Tat Prakasham, which is expansions. Tat Shakti, which means the energies. And finally, Krishna Chaitanya, the Supreme Lord himself.
So now let's start with the first verse, which is the invocation of this beautiful Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktan Isham Ishavatarakan Tat Prakashamscha Tat Shakti Krishna Chaitanya Samyakam. So these verses that we will repeat today, this is text 1. If all of you can make a note, these are very, very wonderful verses. If we also can keep a note of them and try to memorize them later as a home assignment. Because after our session today, we will now meet again after a break of 3 days. We will have a break on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We will meet again on Monday evening according to US time and Tuesday morning according to India time. So in this 3
Because
days,
on Friday evening, US time, and Saturday morning, India time, we are dedicating once a week Hindi programs. And so Monday to Thursday would be Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in English, and Friday would be in Hindi, Brahma Samhita. Based on everyone's feedback of our Hindi listeners, Brahma Samhita was at the top of the list. So Brahma Samhita is what we would be doing every Friday, once a week
Friday
in Hindi.
In Hindi, Friday according to US time, and Saturday morning in India time. So we look forward to seeing all of you. But again, so these can be the verses that as an assignment for Chaitanya Charitamrita, if you can memorize these verses, they are very, very beautiful. Just, before our chanting of our japa, if we just meditate on these verses, they are really, really, really beautiful. So the translation for the first verse is,
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual masters, the devotees of the Lord's incarnations, his plenary portions, his energies, and the primeval Lord himself, Shri Krishna Chaitanya.
Second verse.
Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaudodaya Pushpavanto Chitram Sandau Tamodudau.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gaura. Gaura Desha means Navadvip, to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. So now we'll recite text 4. Anarpita charinchirat karunayavatirnakalo samarpayitum munnato jwalarasa swabhakti shriyam Hari Purata Sundara Dyuti Kadamba Sandipita Sada Hridaya Kandare Spuratu Vasachinandana.
May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Shachi Devi, be transcendently situated in the innermost chambers of your hearts. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his own causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before, the most sublime and radiant mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love.
So this verse is a very, very important verse for our Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the followers of Lord Chaitanya, because this verse is a blessing. When we are speaking this particular verse, we are invoking the blessings of our previous Acharyas who are giving us this blessing that, may Lord Chaitanya, he come and he be established in the region of our hearts. What more do we want? How we can get more and more attached to the lotus feet of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. This particular verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 1, text 4, very, very, very important verse. That the Supreme Lord himself has come as Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu, as the fulfiller of all of our desires. So please, if we can try to memorize this verse and try to recite it, it is so beautiful just to recite this verse again and again and yet again. Text 5.
Radha
Krishna Pranaya Vikriti Ladini Shakti Rasma त्वानामपि भुवि पुरा देहभेदं गतौ तौ चैतन्याख्यं प्रकटम् अधुना तद्वयं चैक्यमाप्तम् राधा भावद्युति सुवलितं नौमि कृष्ण स्वरूपम्. The loving affairs of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, previously they separated themselves. Now these two transcendental identities have united again in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who has manifested himself with the sentiment and the complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. So we can see here in this particular verse that how Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's establishing the position of Lord Chaitanya. Just imagine, this is just in the 5th verse. In the 5th verse of this very chapter, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he is establishing the supremacy of Lord Chaitanya, his position as Krishna himself. And who has he come as? With the mood of Srimati Radharani, with the golden complexion of Srimati Radharani. So this way he is establishing anyone who has any doubt. If we can just quote, that if anyone asks us, how do we know that Lord Chaitanya is supreme? How do we know that he is Krishna himself who has come in the mood of Srimati Radharani, that he has come with the mood of Srimati Radharani? If we say that, then if anyone asks us, we can then immediately quote this particular verse. Immediately we can just say this particular verse to quote directly from the Shastra. Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Ladini Shakti Rasma. Ladini Shakti. Krishna has come with his internal potency, with Srimati Radharani's potency. This is so beautiful that we have all of this at the fingertips so that we can quote these verses and establish the supremacy of Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu.
Then texts 7 to 11, Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifies Lord Nityananda. Text 7 says, Sankarshana Karana Toya Shayi, Garbhodashayi Chapayogdhishayi, Sheshascha Yasyam Sakala Sanityanandakya Rama Sharanam Mamastu. May Shri Nityananda Ram be the object of my constant remembrance. Sankarshana, Sheshanaga, and the Vishnus who lie on the Karana ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk, as are his plenary portions and the portions of his plenary portions. Shri Nityananda Ram ki jai. Here he's glorifying Lord Nityananda. Text 7 to 11, we are just focusing on text 7, where he's saying this on Nityananda Trayodashi, we always chant this verse, Sankarshana Karana Toyashayi, that Nityananda Prabhu is none other than Balaram. He is Balaram himself. May he be my constant remembrance. Nityanandakya Ramaha Sharanam Mamastu. He is Sankarshana, the Sheshanag and the Vishnus who lie on the Karana ocean. The Karanodakshai Vishnu, who is on the causal ocean, he's in his yoga nidra. From his, when he's sleeping, millions and millions of universes are coming out from every pore of his while he's sleeping. And when we sleep, we inhale and then we exhale. And when Mahavishnu, Karanodakshai Vishnu, he exhales, millions of universes come out. When he inhales, all of them come back into him. So we are actually living in the dream of the sleeping Karnodakshai Vishnu. And that is none other than Nityananda Ram's expansions. It says these are his plenary portions and the portions of his plenary portions. Of who? Of Lord Nityananda, because he's none other than Balaram. Who are his portions and portions of his plenary portions? Sankarshana is the one on whom Lord Shiva, when he is meditating, he has a mala when he's meditating in his pose. He is meditating on Sankarshana. It's explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. Sankarshana is the same person who is many times, who actually gave darshan to Maharaj Chitraketu and who gave him the instructions and liberated Maharaj Chitraketu. Sheshanag, we all know Sheshanag, he is with his thousands of hoods and thousands of mouths. He is glorifying the Lord and his pastimes more and more, and still he has not completed it. That is Sheshanag, the basis of the universe. And then all the Vishnus, they are also portions of plenary portions of who? Nityananda Ram, who is actually an expansion of Krishna. But ultimately, they are all, the spiritual world and everything else is expanding directly from Lord Balaram. Three Vishnus, Karanodakshai Vishnu, when he's exhaling, inhaling millions of universes. Within each of that universe is the Garbhodakshai Vishnu. That is also an expansion of Nityananda Ram. And from his navel, the lotus flower comes in, on top of which is Lord Brahma. And then Kshirodakshai Vishnu, the ocean of milk, Kshira, Udaka, Shai. Kshira means milk. There is Kshirodakshai Vishnu who expands into each and every atom and the space between the atoms, the Paramatma. This is the expansion of none other than Nityananda Ram. So we are paying obeisances to such Nityananda Prabhu.
Then text 12 and 13, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami in this first chapter, he is glorifying Sri Advaita Acharya. Text 12, he glorifies Advaita Acharya by saying, Mahavishnur Jagat Karta Mayaya Srijat Yadaha Tasyavatara Evayam Advaita Acharya Ishwaraha. Sri Advaita Acharya is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic world through the actions of Maya. So Advaita Acharya is established as the incarnation of Mahavishnu. It's very, very special. Now, in text 14, we come to a very, very, very important verse. Text 14 of this chapter is a very, very important verse. It's also called as the 5-star verse. So please remember, not 5-star chocolate, but 5-star verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is the 5-star verse of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Adi Leela chapter 1, text 14.
Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is non-different from his features as a devotee, as a devotional incarnation, as devotional manifestation, as a pure devotee, and as devotional energy. These are the 5. The Supreme Lord in 5 features is Pancha Tattva. The first is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Pancha Tattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam. Who is Bhakta Rupa? Is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's the original form of a devotee. Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam. Who is the Bhakta Swarupakam? That's Sri Nityananda Prabhu, which means the expansion of a devotee. Then Bhaktavataram, the incarnation of a devotee, because he's Mahavishnu incarnation. And Sadashiva and Mahavishnu combined, it is said. Advaita Acharya, Bhaktavataram. Then Bhaktakyam means a pure devotee, which is Srivas Thakur, who is none other than the incarnation of Narada Muni. And Bhakta Shaktikam, which is the devotional energy which is Sri Gadadhar Pandit, who is none other than Srimati Radharani. Some say the effulgence of Srimati Radharani.
So this is very, very beautiful. It's called the 5-star verse. So when we offer our obeisances to Panchatattva, we of course say the most famous verse of Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So um, when we say, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, that is also the Panchatattva Pranam mantra. But this one, Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam, that Panchatattva are the direct manifestations of Krishna himself, who is, Krishna, who is manifesting as Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu in these 5 different aspects, 5 different forms. So very nice mantra to actually offer obeisances to the Panchatattva as well.
Then 15, 16, 17, they are the Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojana mantras to Sri Sri Radha Madan Mohan, to Sri Sri Radha Govinda and Sri Sri Radha Gopinath ji.
Srila Prabhupada mentions that why, immediately after glorifying the Panchatattva, first Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he started by, just offering obeisances to his gurus. Then he started glorifying Lord Chaitanya, establishing the divinity of Lord Chaitanya. Then he talked about Lord Nityananda, glorified Lord Nityananda, Advaita Acharya, then the Panchatattva. And now suddenly he's talking directly about Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Govinda, Radha Gopinath. Why is he doing that? How could he jump like this directly to Radharani and to Krishna, to these 3 principal deities of Sri Vrindavan Dham? Srila Prabhupada explains this. And Srila Prabhupada says that the reason why Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he is saying these 3 mantras, glorifying these 3 deities, because these 3 deities are the principal deities of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. So by glorifying the deities of Brajadham, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is actually paving the path to glorify the 6 Goswamis who are his direct spiritual masters. So this is how in the etiquette we understand so beautifully Srila Prabhupada has explained why over here the Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojana mantras are talked about. This is part of our Mangalacharana. And these verses are there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is text 15, glorifying Sri Sri Radha Madan Mohanji, who is the Sambandha Vigraha. Sambandha means establishing our relationship with Krishna. So he is called as the Sambandha Vigraha. So this mantra is called as the Sambandha Mantra. Jayatam Surator Pangor Mama Manda Matergatihi Matsarvasva Padam Hojo Radha Madana Mohano.
Glory to all merciful Srimati Radharani Madan Mohan. I am lame and ill-advised. Yes, yet they are my directors, and their lotus feet are everything to me. Jayatam Suratau Pangor. I am lame, Pangu. But at the same time, I am ill-advised. But still, they are my life and soul. Mama Manda Matergati. Mandamati. But still, they are very much my, their lotus feet are everything to me. Of Radha, Madan Mohan, who is the deities of Srila Sanatan Goswami. Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadaha Srimad Ratnagara Simhasanastau Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prishthalibhi Sevyamanav Smarami.
In a temple of jewels in Vrindavan, underneath a desire tree, Sri Sri Radha Govinda, served by their most confidential associates, sit upon an effulgent throne. I offer my humble obeisances unto them. This is text 16 of this first chapter. So here, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is talking about Sri Sri Radha Govinda ji, who are the Abhideya. Abhideya means one who engages us in the loving service of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. That is Radha Govinda, who are the worshipable deities um, from Srila Rupa Goswami. So this is so beautiful that how, underneath a desire tree, under the Kalpa Vriksha, that Radha Govinda are seated on a huge, beautiful, decorated throne and served by their confidential associates.
These Shri Radha Govinda are the worshipable deities of Srila Rupa Goswami. And there is this very beautiful temple in Jaipur.
Right now, of course, because of the, although these three main deities are also, the main deities have been moved out of Vrindavan, but the temples are still in Vrindavan and their replica deities are in Vrindavan. But the original deities are worshipped in Jaipur and Karoli, these three deities, Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Govindaji, and Radha Gopinathji. So this last verse, text 17, is glorifying Sri Sri Radha Gopinathji, who is the Prayojana deity, means who gives us the spiritual bliss. After we establish our relationship, then we engage in the service. And then while we are engaged in the service, then we experience the bliss of Krishna Bhakti, of engaging in devotional service. That bliss is awarded by Sri Sri Radha Gopinathji. So this Radha Gopinathji, this is the pranam mantra of the Prayojana Vigraha.
Shriman Rasa Rasarambhi Vamshi Vata Katasthita Karshan Venu Swanair Gopi Gopinatha Shri Aistanaha. Srila Gopinath, who originated the transcendental mellow of the rasa dance, stands on the shore in Vamshivata and attracts the attention of all the cowherd damsels with the sound of his celebrated flute. May they all confer upon us their benediction.
Srila Prabhupada says that if anyone, when these deities were actually carved by Maharaj Vajranabha, the great grandson of Sri Krishna himself, when these deities were carved, because Maharaj Vajranabha wanted to carve a deity who looks exactly like Krishna. So when he actually first carved Madan Mohan, and when he carved Madan Mohan, the lotus feet resembled Krishna's. Then he carved Radha Govindaji, that the middle torso of the body of Krishna, the chest and the waist looked exactly like Krishna. That is Radha Govindaji. And Radha Gopinathji, when he carved, was the third deity when he carved, that the lotus face of Gopinathji resembled exactly that of Krishna. So this is, how if we want to take, it is said that if we want to see Krishna, if we take darshan of these three deities in one day, it is equivalent to taking darshan of Sri Krishna himself. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan ji, Shri Shri Radha Govind ji, and Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ji ki jai.
And sometimes we may be wondering, how do we know that the lotus feet is same as of lotus feet, the middle torso and the face is same as Krishna's of these three deities? In fact, when Vajranabh had carved these deities, at that time, Parikshit Maharaj's mother was called to actually verify these deities, and she identified them in this way. So then the next verses talk about Sri Chaitanya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
So generally, before we start chanting the Chaitanya Charitamrita, just like how we say Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, before we recite Srimad Bhagavatam or Srimad Bhagavad Gita, before we start reciting Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is advised by Srila Prabhupada to chant these two lines. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Glory to Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda, glory to Advaita Chandra, and glory to all the devotees of Sri Gaura. Then Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami from text 19 to 44 glorifies the 6 Goswamis of Sri Vrindavan Dham and all the other different Vaishnavas. In fact, in text 45, he says, Guru Krishna Rupe Haya Shastrera Pramane Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Korena Bhakta Gane. According to the deliberate opinion of all revealed scriptures, the spiritual master is non-different from Krishna. Lord Krishna, in the form of the spiritual master, delivers his devotees. Therefore, it is said that the relationship of a disciple with his guru, with spiritual teacher, spiritual master, is as good as the relationship with the Supreme Lord himself. A spiritual master, it says, should actually represents himself as the servitor personality of Godhead for the disciple. But the disciple must look upon him as the manifested representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
So every day in the morning, we are trained by Srila Prabhupada to sing the Guru Ashtakam, which is written by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who is actually a great follower and disciple of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he wrote the Guru Ashtakam, and in that, the 6th verse says, Sakshat Haritvena Samasta Shastre Uktastatha Bhav Yata Eva Satvi
Kintu Prabhorya Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam.
So which means that Guru is actually Sakshad Hari. He is non-different from Lord Hari himself. He's Sakshad Hari. But here, it is also said, the same thing is being said by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, that the spiritual master is actually directly representing Krishna himself. He is Sakshad Hari. But the spiritual master never thinks that I am God. Srila Prabhupada said, as soon as the spiritual master thinks that he is God, he becomes the opposite. He becomes DOG, no longer God. So we must be very careful that yes, as disciples, we must adore our spiritual masters, worship our spiritual masters as good as God. But the spiritual master never considers himself to be God. He considers himself to be the representative of God.
Shiksha Guru ke tajani Krishna Raswarupa Antaryami Bhakta Shrestha Eidui Rupa. One should know the instructing spiritual master to be the personality of Krishna. Lord Krishna manifests himself as the super soul and as the greatest devotee of the Lord himself.
So here in this verse, not only is the Diksha Guru to be the direct representative of Krishna, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that even the Shiksha Guru is actually directly representing Krishna himself.
And then in the final verses, there are about more than 100 verses in this chapter. And in the 85, 86 verses, he's actually saying out of the 120 verses, he's saying Sri Krishna and Balaram, the personalities of Godhead who formerly appeared in Vrindavan and were millions of times more effulgent than the sun and moon, have arisen over the eastern horizon of Gauradesha, being compassionate for the fallen state of the world. So here it's very clearly said Krishna and Balaram are none other than Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. It is not that they are incarnations. They are Krishna and Balaram themselves. And then out of the 110 verses, the final few verses say that that Krishna is the absolute truth. And if we want to achieve pure love of God, pure love of Krishna, then we can do that only by congregational chanting of the holy name, which is the essence of this bliss. And you know what? These two brothers, Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda, which means Krishna Balaram, they have dissipated the darkness of the inner core of the heart. And so they help one meet the two kinds of Bhagavat. What are the two Bhagavat? The person Bhagavat and the book Bhagavat. It explains in the next verse that the book Bhagavata is the book Srimad Bhagavatam. Person Bhagavat who is embodying the qualities mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. And finally, it ends with the essence saying, what are the different kinds of ignorance of the conditioned souls? And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, they drive away these 5 kinds of ignorance of the conditioned souls. What are the 5 kinds? When we worship Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Nityananda, whenever we chant, Gauranga, Nityananda, immediately they arrive, they come, and they dissipate these 5 kinds of ignorance. First, ignorance is accepting the body to be the self.
Second one is making material sense gratification one's standard of enjoyment.
The third is being anxious due to material identification.
Fourth one is lamenting, always lamenting.
Yeah. And Krishna Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu, they can drive it away. Fifth, thinking that there is anything beyond the absolute truth. These 5 kinds of ignorance can be taken away by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu if we are regretting something, if we are thinking about the past, why did this happen? Why did I do this? If I would have done like this, it would have been better. If I would have done that, what would have been the case? Oh, I didn't get this. These are things of ignorance. Just chant Gauranga, Nityananda. They will come and drive away. They will come and just push away that ignorance, drive them away, get lost. That's what they do. They kick that ignorance away from our minds. Therefore, these teachings of Lord Chaitanya, they are able to eradicate these 5 kinds of ignorance. And this ends the first chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai.
So now we'll, because this particular chapter that we just read today is, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami glorifying the spiritual masters and glorifying the previous Acharyas and glorifying the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. So we thought that in that mood, through their deities. So we thought that in their mood, we would also sing this song, very beautiful bhajan written by Srila Narottam Das Thakur, which is called the Nama Sankirtana. And here in this, there's it's basically glorifying the all the previous acharyas, glorifying the 6 Goswamis, and what happens when we seek shelter of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, when we seek shelter of the previous acharyas. So we'll just briefly read the translations.
Hari, obeisances to Lord Hari and to Krishna and Yadava. Obeisances to the Lord of Yadus, Madhava, Krishna. Gopala, Govinda, Rama, O vanquisher of Madhu. Giridhari, Lord of the Gopis, bewilderer of Cupid. Sri Chaitanya, Nityananda, Sri Advaita Sita. Hari Guru Vaishnava, Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita.
All glory to Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, to Srila Jiva Goswami, to Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami. I bow down to the lotus feet of these 6 Goswamis. By their grace, our obstacles can be destroyed and all our desires can be fulfilled.
I am the servant of these 6 Goswamis. The dust of their lotus feet is my 5-fold subsistence. To be a servant of their lotus feet and to reside in the company of devotees. This is my aspiration, birth after birth after birth.
When these six Goswamis lived in Rajadham, they revealed the eternal pastimes of Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. In ecstasy, let us all sing the name of Lord Hari and worship Vrindavan Dham, joyfully fixing our mind upon the lotus feet of the bona fide spiritual masters.
The lotus feet of my Guru and the Vaishnavas are my aspiration. Narottam Das thus sings Harinam Sankirtan.
Viva.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopal Govinda Ram Srimati Sudha Giridhari Gopinath Madara Moha Gopal Govinda Ram Srimati Sudha Giridhari Gopinath Madara Moha Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavad Gita Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavad Gita Shri Rupi Sanatan Bhattara Guna Shri Bhagopala Bhatta Dasara Guna Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Guna Shri Bhagopala Bhatta Dasara Guna Echai Gosai Gori Charana Bhatta Jaha Vate Vikrana Abhishapura Echai Gosai Gori Charana Bhatta Jaha Vate Vikrana Abhishapura Echai Gosai Jan Koi Tarata Tasa Paravadare Pura Panchagyan Echai Gosai Jan Koi Tarata Tasa Paravadare Pura Panchagyan Kadira Charana Shri Bhakta Sarabhas Janame Janame Hare Eya Vilas Kadira Charana Shri Bhakta Sarabhas Janame Eya Vilas Echai Gosai Jame Praja Koila Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Echai Gosai Jame Praja Koila Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash Anande Bola Hari Braja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Bhagaviyama Anande Bola Hari Braja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Bhagaviyama Shri Guru Vaishnava Bhagaviyama Nama Sankirtana Kore Narottama Das Shri Guru Vaishnava Bhagaviyama Nama Sankirtana Kore Narottama Das Narayana Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Jai Shri Ram Sankirtan ki Jai Shri Sada Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Shri ISKCON Vartaman Guru Vrind ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaur Sitanath Premanande Hari 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 Bol.
This song also reminds us of Srila Prabhupada when he was in Sri Vrindavan Dham during his final days. His very dear god brother, Sri Akinchan Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, he came to visit Srila Prabhupada. This Akinchan Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, when he was in Navadvip, he joined the temple of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he would just sit and chant whole day, just sit and chant. Sometimes he would not even take break for prasadam. But otherwise, he would just break for prasadam, otherwise just continue chanting. And so the devotees, the management in the temple, Gaudiya Math, they were like, this devotee, he just sits and chants and then eats and then chants and eats, and that's all he does. He doesn't do any service. What's going on? So then they went and complained to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. This devotee, he's joined the temple, but he doesn't do any service. What can we do about him? And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, if you can do like him, if you can just sit and chant 24 hours a day, I will feed you food. You don't have to do any service as well. So Sri Akinchan Das Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj was so attached to the holy names, and at the final days of Srila Prabhupada, he came to visit Srila Prabhupada. And both of them, they were speaking something in Bengali. And then suddenly, Srila Prabhupada, actually Krishnadas Kaviraj, Sri Akinchan Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, he started saying, Tadera Charana Sevi Bhakta Shanebas. And Srila Prabhupada completed it. Janame Janame Hoy Ei Agilas. And then Srila Prabhupada started laughing like a child. And he continued, Tadera Charana Sevi Krishna Bhakta Shanebas. Janame Janame Hoy Ei Abhilash. And they started laughing. Both started laughing, and both started continuing to just keep chanting this particular verse from this song. It was just something transcendental. They were not talking in words. They were just talking in emotions through the seventh verse of this particular song. So it's a very divine song. Tadera Charana Shevi Bhakta Shanebas. This is glorifying the six Goswamis, that we just want to be the servant of the lotus feet of these six Goswamis, and to reside in the company of devotees. This is my aspiration, birth after birth. And they were just laughing and crying, chanting this verse again and again and again. So this is a very mysterious verse, which why Srila Prabhupada and Akinchan Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj were laughing, why sometimes they were crying and just laughing like a child, looking at each other, chanting this verse, is still a transcendental mystery. But there is something mystical about this song and this verse.
So before we open up the lines, we would like to read out the quiz questions for everyone.
First, what do the first 12 chapters of Adi Leela represent? Second, what are the 6 expansions of Lord Chaitanya?
Third, on whom is Lord Shiva meditating? Fourth, give the name of the 3 Vishnus.
Fifth, which verse is said to be the 5-star verse? Sixth, what's the name of the verse which is recommended to chant before reading Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Seventh, how should a spiritual master be treated? And eighth, what are the different kinds of ignorance of the conditioned souls? Very, very wonderful quiz questions. Now let us open our lines. Hare Krishna. Tulasi.
Garima. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, beta.
I like the verse you should chant from Adi Leela, Madhya Leela, and I like your bhajan and your class.
Oh, thank you, beta. You are very, very sweet, Tulasi. Sometimes you can turn on your video so we can have your darshan also.
Tomorrow, okay? Can I turn?
Okay, tomorrow you turn, okay? Thank you, beta. Thank you, beta. Hari bol.
Hari bol.
Garima.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Prabhuji, that was pranam, all glories to Shri Prabhupada and Gurudev. I like this class because No, because I could say the shlokas, and like you said that this spiritual master is as good as God. I love that how you said it, because I was always confused that is spiritual master good as God? And you just answered it, so I like that. And I love the 2 lines. How you just said that Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gauda Bhakta Vrinda. I really just enjoyed those 2 lines, but I don't even know the meaning. But I just enjoyed singing it again and again and again. And I was singing again. It was just so amazing to me. I loved it. I love this class a lot. A lot. And I drew this in the day. This
Oh,
Jagan.
wow. So beautiful, beta. So beautiful.
He has legs.
No, that's the girl.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes.
Very pretty.
Who's that girl? Garima?
That's little Garima.
My mom helped me a little bit.
I love the eyes of Lord Jagannath, the way you did his eyes. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, beta. Okay, any other questions?
Okay, if not, then we can end here. Thank you so much. Tomorrow we'll continue. Shri Chaitanya.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Mataji, can we write in Chaitanya Charitamrita book? Like, can we write with a pencil? And like, sometime even while attending Bhagavad Gita lectures, I get this question often that certain things important, and as you're speaking, sometimes I feel like writing. So is it okay to write in any of these books or no?
It's better if you write in a note. Maybe you can write on a sticky
note
and then stick those notes there rather than writing on the book.
Okay. Okay.
Especially the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, because these books are said to be non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So therefore, if you do sticky notes, maybe, like on each verse, that may be a better idea.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for the idea.
That's what we do.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, beta. Hare Krishna. Okay, so tomorrow we are eagerly looking forward to seeing all of you in our Hindi session. Those of you who understand Hindi, please join us for the Brahma Samhita. Our Hindi is more like English, so please join us. And we'll be very, very delighted to. The Hindi class will be 30 minutes delayed. Instead of 7 p.m. Central, it will be at 7:30 p.m. Central.
Means 7 a.m.
India time. 7 a.m. India time. It'll be 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we look forward to
This is every Friday. This is only for Friday. Monday to Thursday, it'll be back to 7 p.m. Central, and which is 6:30 a.m. India time.
So, and then for Chaitanya Charitamrita, we will see you again after 3 days. We will see you on Monday evening. Hare Krishna. All right. Anyone else? Any other questions? Anjali Mataji. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji and Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. It was a very nice session. You mentioned about the 3 deities and having darshan in one day. Have you done that, Mataji? Is it like possible to do that?
It is possible. It's very much possible.
But they are in Jaipur, Karoli, and someplace nearby. So you have to attend Mangal Aarti of Radha Govinda in Jaipur, and right after Mangal Aarti, then you take a car and go to Karoli, which is about 2 to 3 hour drive, and then
we're not sure how far they are, but they can be done in one day.
Yes,
that can be done in one day.
but we have not been able to take darshan personally. In pictures, yes, but maybe one day we'll
Maybe
go
by all of your
to
blessings, we can all go together someday.
Hari bol. Hari.
Jaipur Karoli Yatra.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions?
If not, we can end here. Oh, 2 questions.
Yes, Hari Prasad Prabhu. Just a second. Okay.
Which Goswami worshipped Sri Gopinath Ji temple, and who is the spiritual master for Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami? Gopinath Ji was
Madhu
Madhu Pandit. Madhu Pandit is the one who worshipped Gopinath Ji, and the spiritual master of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is Raghunath Bhatta Goswami,
One of the 6
one of the
Goswamis.
6 Goswamis.
Where he considered Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, all the 6 Goswamis as his Shiksha Gurus. So, Hare Krishna.
Okay. See you tomorrow at 7:30 p.m.
Central Time.
Central Time for Brahma Samhita in Hindi.
Hare Krishna.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha
Patitanam
patitanam
pavanebhyo
pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo
वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः हरे कृष्णा कोटि वैष्णवेंद्र की जय श्रीराम की जय
Hare Krishna. Hare